The final lecture took place in the Council's highest security facility, 3 levels below the Academy, in chambers designed to contain information that could destabilize galactic civilization. Only 7 students remained, and each had undergone psychological evaluation to ensure they could process what they were about to learn. Professor Kelnara looked exhausted, as if the week's revelations had aged him significantly. The datapad he carried was now connected directly to the Council's most classified intelligence networks, providing real-time updates on developing situations throughout the galaxy. In the past 24 hours, everything has changed, he announced without his usual formalities. The approaching intergalactic object has been identified. Human activities have accelerated beyond all projections, and the Council has made decisions that will fundamentally alter galactic civilization. The holographic display activated, showing a real-time view of the galaxy's edge where long-range sensors were tracking the approaching object. What they revealed defied comprehension. The intergalactic visitor is a harvester ship, Kelnara explained. It belongs to a species that consumes entire galaxies, converting all matter and energy into resources for their civilization. According to human calculations, it will reach our galaxy in approximately 72 hours. Zixthara's crystalline structure had been permanently altered by the week's stress, and now resonated with harmonics that reflected her species' deepest fears. How do the humans know about this threat? That's what the Council demanded to know, Kelnara replied. 8 hours ago, the first official communication between humans and galactic government occurred. The conversation lasted exactly 17 minutes. The display showed a recording of the historic contact. A single human appeared on the communication screen, appearing remarkably ordinary except for eyes that seemed to contain depths of knowledge that challenged comprehension. I am Dr. Sarah Chen, speaking for humanity, the recorded human said. We have been monitoring your discussions about our activities. We understand your concerns about our defensive preparations, and we appreciate your patience while we completed necessary modifications to local spacetime. The recording continued with questions from Council representatives, but the humans' responses were unlike anything in galactic diplomatic history. You asked how we knew about the approaching harvester. Dr. Chen continued. We didn't know. We prepared for the possibility because mathematical analysis indicated that any galaxy containing sufficiently advanced civilizations would eventually attract the attention of consumption-based species. Mortketh, one of only 2 students from his species psychologically stable enough to continue attending, managed a trembling question. What did the Council ask her? Kelnara manipulated the controls, jumping to specific sections of the conversation. Council Chairman Velthok asked whether humans intended to assume control of galactic government. In the recording, Dr. Chen's expression showed what appeared to be genuine surprise. Control your government? Why would we want to do that? Governing yourselves is part of what makes your civilizations valuable. We're here to ensure you continue existing, not to manage how you exist. But your reality modifications, Chairman Velthok pressed. You're changing fundamental physics without consultation or consent. We're fixing dangerous instabilities that would have led to cascade failures within 500 years, Dr. Chen replied calmly. The modifications ensure that advanced technology can't accidentally unravel space-time. Your civilizations can continue developing without worrying about accidentally destroying existence. Veltara, whose scales had now achieved a transparency that made her almost invisible, whispered, "What about the harvester ship?" Kelnara jumped to another section of the recording. The Council asked the same question. The harvester represents the kind of existential threat we've been preparing to address, Dr. Chen explained. It's a civilization that has consumed approximately 47 galaxies over the past billion years. Our defensive modifications to local spacetime will prevent it from processing matter and energy in this region. And if your modifications don't work? Chairman Velthok asked. Dr. Chen's expression became briefly grim. Then we implement more direct solutions. But we believe the passive approaches will be sufficient. The recording ended, and Kelnara activated real-time sensor displays showing current conditions at the galaxy's edge. The harvester ship arrived 6 hours ago, he announced. What happened next validated every projection about human capabilities. The display showed the massive intergalactic vessel, larger than most star systems, approaching the galaxy's outer boundaries. As it crossed into the region where human modifications had been implemented, something extraordinary occurred. The harvester ship simply stopped functioning, Kellanara explained. Its consumption technologies, which had successfully processed matter from 47 galaxies, became inert. Its movement systems, designed to operate across intergalactic distances, ceased operating. Its communication arrays, which had coordinated galactic destruction for eons, went silent. The hologram showed the massive ship drifting powerlessly, its various systems failing one by one as they encountered the modified physics of local spacetime. Human modifications to reality had made the harvester's technology impossible, Kellanara continued. Technologies designed to consume galaxies simply couldn't function in space where the basic rules had been quietly rewritten. Zixathara struggled to process the implications. The humans defeated a galaxy-consuming threat without firing a single weapon? They defeated it by making its existence incompatible with local physics, Kellanara confirmed. The harvester ship represents technology more advanced than anything in galactic civilization, but it was designed to operate in unmodified space-time. In human-modified space, it became as helpless as primitive chemical rockets. The professor switched to another display, showing human ships approaching the disabled harvester. Current intelligence indicates that humans are boarding the harvester ship to study its technology and determine the location of the civilization that built it. Are they planning to attack the harvester's home civilization? One of the remaining ethereal beings asked. According to their communications, they're planning to visit the harvester civilization and offer them the same protections they've provided to our galaxy, Kellanara replied. They appear to believe that consumption-based civilizations develop such behaviors due to instabilities in unmodified spacetime. The display showed human, mathematical models suggesting that the harvester civilization had originally been peaceful, but had been forced to consume other galaxies due to physics, instabilities that threatened their existence. Humans theorize that their reality modifications will eliminate the survival pressures that drove the harvester civilization to galactic consumption, Kellanara explained. They plan to offer modified spacetime to the harvester's home region, potentially converting galaxy consumers into galaxy protectors. Mortketh's entire exoskeleton was trembling. What has the Council decided to do about all this? Kellanara activated a final display showing the most recent Council resolutions. 3 hours ago, the Council voted unanimously to formally lift all restrictions on human participation in galactic affairs. They have requested that humanity accept full responsibility for galactic defense against cosmic-scale threats. Additionally, he continued, the Council has established the Human Liaison Department and offered to coordinate galactic resources to support human defensive activities. Finally, the Council has issued a formal apology to humanity for centuries of quarantine and offered reparations for any inconvenience caused by galactic misunderstanding of human intentions. The room was silent except for the quiet humming of overwhelmed nervous systems. So the humans were right all along? Zixathara asked quietly. The humans were preparing for threats that most galactic civilizations couldn't even imagine, Kellanara replied. They spent centuries developing capabilities to protect civilizations that had banned them from participation in their own defense. Veltara managed one final question despite her species' psychological distress. What happens now? Kellanara smiled for the first time in days. Now we discover what galactic civilization looks like when it's protected by beings who understand cosmic-scale engineering. According to human projections, we're entering the most peaceful and prosperous era in galactic history. And, he added, we'll probably discover that this galaxy was never the only one humans have been protecting. Their defensive networks likely extend throughout local galactic clusters, ensuring that civilizations we've never imagined remain safe from threats we could never survive. The final holographic display showed human installations throughout nearby galactic regions, suggesting a protective network that spanned distances beyond galactic civilizations' ability to explore. The humans weren't banned from galactic warfare because they were too dangerous to fight alongside, Kellanara concluded. They were banned because they were too advanced to need anyone's permission to protect everything they considered valuable. And apparently, he said as the security systems began powering down, they consider all sentient life valuable enough to protect, whether it appreciates their protection or not. Dr. Sarah Chen pressed her palm against the cold metal wall of the alien medical bay, her breath forming small clouds in the frigid air. The ship's life support systems had been struggling for 3 days now, ever since the HFY rescue vessel had pulled her from the wreckage of the research station Prometheus. The station had been humanity's first deep space research outpost, positioned at the edge of known space to study exotic matter formations. Sarah had been the only survivor when the containment field failed, triggering a cascade reaction that tore the station apart. She should have died with the rest of her crew. But somehow her emergency pod had drifted for weeks before the HFY found her. Now she lay on what the aliens called a healing platform, watching strange lights pulse across crystalline displays that she couldn't understand. The HFY were an insectoid species, tall and graceful with 4 arms and compound eyes that shifted through different colors when they communicated. Their language was a series of clicks and harmonics that her universal translator struggled to interpret. Zexith, the ship's medical officer, approached with careful steps. His carapace was a deep blue-green, and his eyes glowed with a soft amber light that Sarah had learned meant concern. "Human Sarah," he clicked, his translator rendering the words in stilted English. "Your species' biology remains mystery to us. We try to help, but your body rejects our healing methods." Sarah smiled weakly. "I appreciate everything you've done, really. But human physiology is probably very different from yours." The truth was more complicated than that. Humans were relatively new to the galactic community, having only made first contact 5 years ago. Most alien species found humans fascinating but primitive. They had advanced technology and medicine, but it was all designed for their own biology or for the dozen other species that made up the galactic collective. Humans were an anomaly. Their bodies were surprisingly resilient but also surprisingly complex. Where other species had evolved specialized organs for specific functions, humans had developed redundant systems and remarkable adaptability. It made them hardy survivors, but it also made them difficult to treat with conventional alien medicine. "Your internal bleeding has stopped," Zexth reported, checking his instruments. "But the trauma to your neural pathways from the radiation exposure continues to worsen. Our medical databases have no protocols for human brain chemistry." Sarah nodded, trying not to think about what that meant. The exotic matter explosion had bombarded her with types of radiation that could scramble neural connections. She could already feel it starting. Occasional gaps in her memory, moments where words wouldn't come when she called for them. "How long do I have?" she asked quietly. Zexith's eyes shifted to a darker orange. "Unknown. Perhaps days. Perhaps weeks. Your species shows remarkable resistance to conditions that would kill others quickly." The irony wasn't lost on her. Humans were too tough to die quickly, but too alien for effective treatment. She was going to waste away slowly while the kindest creatures she'd ever met watched helplessly. "Is there any way to contact Earth?" she asked. "My government should know what happened to the Prometheus." "We have sent distress signals on human frequencies," Zexith assured her. "But we are very far from your space. It will take time for any response." Captain Mordoon, the ship's commander, entered the medical bay. His species, the Halani, were tall and slender, with pale gray skin and large black eyes. They were known throughout the galaxy as peaceful traders and diplomats. "Human Sarah," he said in his whispering voice, "we have received a response to our distress call." "A human ship is coming," Sarah's heart jumped. "How far away?" 12 days at maximum speed," Mordoon replied. "We will do everything we can to keep you stable until they arrive." "Thank you," Sarah said, and she meant it. These aliens owed her nothing. They had found her floating in space and taken her aboard out of pure compassion. Now they were risking their own mission to wait for human help. Over the next few days, Sarah learned more about her rescuers. The HFY ship was called the Gentle Current, and it carried a mixed crew of different species working together on scientific surveys. They were studying the same exotic matter formations that had destroyed her station, but from a safe distance. Zexith spent hours trying different treatments, adjusting his equipment to work with human biology. He consulted with experts across the galaxy through long-range communication, sharing Sarah's medical data and hoping someone might have insights. The Halani engineer, Tashka, modified the ship's environmental systems to make Sarah more comfortable. The artificial gravity was adjusted to match Earth normal, and he even managed to synthesize something close to human food using the ship's molecular assemblers. But despite their efforts, Sarah could feel herself getting worse. The neural damage was spreading, causing seizures that left her disoriented and weak. Sometimes she would forget where she was or why she was there. The gaps in her memory were growing longer. On the 8th day, she had a particularly bad episode. When she came to, she found Zexith and 2 other crew members monitoring her vital signs with obvious distress. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I know you're doing everything you can. Do not apologize," Zexith clicked firmly. "You are our responsibility now. We will not abandon you." That night, Sarah lay awake listening to the gentle hum of the ship's engines. She thought about her team on the Prometheus, how they had died quickly when the containment field failed. She thought about Earth, about her sister who was probably still waiting for a message that would never come. But mostly she thought about these aliens who had taken her in. They could have left her pod floating in space. They could have dropped her at the nearest station and continued their mission. Instead, they had chosen to care for a dying human they had never met before. The next morning brought news that changed everything. Captain Morden rushed into the medical bay with his eyes wide with what Sarah had learned was excitement. "Human Sarah," he said breathlessly, "we have received new communications from your people. They are not sending one ship." Sarah struggled to sit up. "What do you mean?" "The entire human fleet is coming," Morden said in amazement. "Hundreds of vessels. They say they are coming to retrieve their citizen and provide humanitarian aid." Sarah stared at him in shock. The human fleet? That was virtually every ship humanity had. Why would they send such a massive force just for her? But as she lay back down, a thought occurred to her. Maybe it wasn't just about her. Maybe it was about what these aliens had done for her. 3 weeks had passed since the human fleet arrived, and the space around the gentle current had transformed into something resembling a floating city. What began as a rescue mission had evolved into the largest cultural exchange in human history. Dr. Sarah Chen walked through the corridors of the UES Endeavour, her recovery nothing short of miraculous. The combined efforts of human and alien medical teams had not only saved her life, but had advanced xenobiology research by decades. She was returning to the gentle current for the 3rd time this week, having become an unofficial ambassador between the 2 groups. "The Kethvar medical techniques are incredible," she explained to Admiral Kane as they traveled toward the docking bay. "They use harmonic frequencies to stimulate cellular regeneration. Dr. Martinez thinks we can adapt their methods for human physiology." Kane nodded, still amazed by the developments. "And what does Zexith think about our medical technology?" Sarah smiled. "He's fascinated by our redundant organ systems. He spent 6 hours yesterday studying how human hearts can compensate for damaged valves. He keeps saying we're impossibly resilient for such a chaotic species." The docking bay of the Endeavour buzzed with activity. Human and alien personnel worked side by side, sharing knowledge and technology with an enthusiasm that surprised everyone. Language barriers that had seemed insurmountable were dissolving as both species learned to communicate through demonstration and shared purpose. Tashka, the Halani engineer, had become something of a celebrity among human technical crews. His understanding of exotic matter containment had already prevented 3 potential accidents aboard human vessels. In return, human engineers had helped him develop more efficient power distribution, systems that he was eager to share with the broader galactic collective. The humans approach problems differently than any species we have encountered. Tashka explained to Captain Morden as they watched joint engineering teams work on upgrades to the gentle current. Where we seek elegant solutions, they create robust ones. Where we optimize for efficiency, they optimize for survival. This philosophical difference was becoming apparent in every interaction. Alien technology was sophisticated and precise, designed by species that had evolved in stable environments with predictable challenges. Human technology was adaptable and redundant, created by a species that had survived ice ages, plagues, and countless other catastrophes through sheer stubborn persistence. The combination was proving remarkably effective. Human-designed emergency protocols were being implemented across the alien vessel, while alien precision instruments were being installed on human ships. Both sides were learning that their approaches weren't just different, they were complementary. Commander Elena Vasquez, Kane's chief diplomatic officer, found herself spending most of her time aboard the gentle current. The aliens' decision-making process fascinated her. Unlike humans who often acted on instinct and emotion, The Cathvar and Helani approached problems through careful consensus and logical analysis. "It's remarkable," she reported to Kane during their daily briefing. "When they decided to rescue Dr. Chen, it wasn't an emotional response. They had a formal discussion about the ethical implications, the resource costs, and the potential consequences. They chose compassion as the logical course of action." Kane found this deeply interesting. "And what do they think of our decision to send the entire fleet?" "They're still trying to understand it," Vasquez admitted. "Captain Morden asked me yesterday if all human decisions are made with such intensity. I told him that when it comes to protecting our people, yes, the cultural exchange was happening at every level. Human cooks worked with alien food technicians to create meals that both species could enjoy. The results were often strange but surprisingly delicious. Human musicians played concerts for alien audiences, who found human emotional expression through sound both chaotic and beautiful. In return, the aliens shared their own forms of art. Cathvar harmonic poetry created patterns of sound that could induce different emotional states. Helani crystal sculptures contained trapped light that told stories through color and movement. Humans found these art forms alien yet somehow moving. Dr. Martinez had established a joint medical research station aboard one of the human hospital ships. Human and alien medical personnel worked together around the clock, comparing treatment methods and sharing case studies. The breakthrough they achieved together were being transmitted to both Earth and the Galactic Collective. "We're learning that biological diversity isn't just about different species," Dr. Martinez explained to a mixed group of researchers. "It's about different approaches to the same problems. Human medicine focuses on fighting disease and injury. Alien medicine focuses on maintaining harmony and balance. Both approaches have their place." Zext had become particularly interested in human psychology. The concept of humans risking everything for strangers puzzled him from a purely logical standpoint. But he was beginning to understand it as a survival strategy. "Your species survived by working together," he observed during one of his conversations with Sarah. "When one human was threatened, all humans responded. This created strong communities that could survive disasters that would destroy individuals." "That's part of it," Sarah agreed. "But it's more than just survival. We form emotional bonds that extend beyond our immediate family groups. When you helped me, you became part of our extended community. Humanity doesn't abandon its community." This concept was revolutionary to many alien species. The Galactic Collective was primarily transactional. Species cooperated when it was mutually beneficial, but rarely at significant cost to themselves. The idea of a species that would sacrifice resources to help strangers challenged many fundamental assumptions about galactic civilization. News of the human response was spreading throughout the galaxy. Other species were beginning to take notice of these newcomers who had committed their entire fleet to rescue a single individual and reward her alien rescuers. Some were impressed by human loyalty, others were concerned about human unpredictability. But aboard the gentle current, something more important was happening. Friendships were forming that transcended species barriers. Human crew members were learning Cathvar clicking languages. Alien personnel were picking up human expressions and humor. Children aboard the human family vessels were exchanging drawings with young aliens via communication links. Captain Morden found himself invited to dinner aboard the Endeavour almost every night. Admiral Kane had taken a personal interest in learning about alien exploration techniques, while Morden was fascinated by human naval traditions and military history. "Your species has fought many wars," Morden observed during one such dinner, "yet you also show great capacity for peace and cooperation. How do you reconcile these contradictions?" Kane considered the question carefully. "We learned that fighting each other was wasteful. We're still competitive, still aggressive when we need to be, but we've learned to direct those instincts toward common goals rather than against each other. Maybe that's why we respond so strongly to threats against our people. We've channeled our warrior instincts into protective ones. And when you encountered us, you chose protection over aggression. You helped one of ours," Kane said simply. "That made you one of ours to protect." As the weeks passed, it became clear that something permanent was being established. The human fleet wasn't just conducting a rescue mission, they were laying the foundation for a new kind of relationship between species. Trade agreements were being discussed. Joint research projects were being planned. Military cooperation protocols were being drafted, but more than that, trust was being built. Real trust based on shared experiences and mutual respect. The aliens had proven their compassion by rescuing Sarah. The humans had proven their loyalty by responding with overwhelming support. Both sides had learned that the other could be counted on when it mattered most. Dr. Chen stood on the observation deck of the Gentle Current, looking out at the vast human fleet surrounding them. Each ship represented thousands of people who had dropped everything to come help her and thank her rescuers. The sight still took her breath away. Regrets? Zexith asked, joining her at the viewport. His English had improved dramatically over the past weeks. About the Prometheus? About being rescued? About any of this? Sarah gestured at the fleet. No regrets. This is the most incredible thing I've ever been part of. We're not just making first contact, we're making first friends. Zexith's eyes shifted to the warm blue color she had learned indicated contentment. Yes, first friends. This is a good phrase for what has happened here. Outside, the human and alien vessels continued their work together, building something that had never existed before in the galaxy, a true alliance based on mutual care rather than mutual benefit. And at the center of it all was the simple act of one species helping another, and the overwhelming response that act had inspired. The emergency session of the Galactic Collective Council had been called by the Vorthak Empire, one of the oldest and most influential members of the governing body. High Counselor Zarthek, an imposing reptilian being with scales that shifted color with his emotions, stood before the assembled representatives of 47 different species. Fellow counselors, his deep voice resonated through the chamber's translation systems. We face an unprecedented situation. The human species has deployed their entire military fleet in response to a simple rescue operation. This level of resource commitment for a single individual suggests either irrational behavior or hidden military intentions. The holographic display showed the current situation. Hundreds of human vessels surrounding the small alien research ship, with more arriving daily. From the collective's perspective, it looked like a massive military buildup disguised as a humanitarian mission. Counselor Zytha of the crystalline Zephyrians spoke next, her voice like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. The humans claim they are expressing gratitude, but no known species commits such resources without expecting significant returns. We must consider the possibility that they are establishing a forward military base under the guise of rescue operations. Ambassador Kel Reston, humanity's representative to the collective, stood to respond. At 45, he was a veteran diplomat who had spent the last 5 years trying to establish Earth's place in galactic politics. The current situation had caught him completely off guard. Honorable counselors, he began, I understand your concerns, but I assure you that humanity's response is exactly what it appears to be, an expression of gratitude toward those who helped one of our people. Zarthek's scales shifted to an aggressive orange pattern. Ambassador Reston, your species has deployed more military assets in this single operation than most worlds possess in their entire defense fleets. You expect us to believe this is mere gratitude? Reston had been asking himself the same question. When Admiral Kane's deployment orders had reached him through diplomatic channels, he had been stunned. Earth had committed virtually every available vessel to what should have been a simple medical evacuation. But after speaking with officials back home, he was beginning to understand the motivation. Counselor Zarthek, may I ask what your species would do if one of your people was rescued by aliens after being left for dead in space? We would naturally express appropriate gratitude. Perhaps a formal commendation, certainly a diplomatic note of appreciation, possibly even a modest gift exchange. And if those aliens then spent weeks caring for your citizen, adapting their technology to keep them alive, risking their own mission to wait for your help, Zarthek's scales flickered with uncertainty. The response would be proportionate to the service rendered. That's exactly what humanity is doing, Reston said firmly. The crew of the Gentle Current didn't just save Dr. Chen's life. They proved that compassion exists between species. They showed us that we're not alone in the galaxy, not just in terms of life, but in terms of decency and kindness. That's worth everything to us. Counselor Veltar of the Aquatic Depths spoke from his water-filled chamber. Ambassador, your explanation suggests that humans form emotional attachments that override logical decision-making. This is concerning behavior in a species with significant military capabilities. The chamber murmured with agreement. Several counselors had been monitoring human development since first contact, and the species consistently displayed behavior that seemed irrational by galactic standards. They formed emotional bonds with other species' pets. They risked their lives to save strangers. They told stories about individuals sacrificing themselves for abstract concepts like honor or freedom. Perhaps, suggested Counselor Yithra of the hive-minded Nexus, the humans are experiencing a collective emotional response that has overwhelmed their capacity for logical thought. This could explain the disproportionate military deployment. Reston felt his patience beginning to strain. These beings saw everything through the lens of cold calculation. They couldn't understand that humanity's greatest strength had always been their ability to care about others, even at personal cost. Counselors, you're approaching this from a fundamentally flawed premise. You assume that our response is irrational because it's not based purely on cost-benefit analysis. But for humans, forming alliances based on trust and mutual respect is the most rational choice we can make. Explain, demanded Zarthek. Reston activated a holographic display showing Earth's history. For thousands of years, my species survived by forming strong social bonds. Groups that cooperated survived disasters that destroyed groups that didn't. We learned that protecting our allies and rewarding kindness created stable communities that could face any challenge. The display showed images of human history, communities rebuilding after natural disasters, strangers helping strangers, nations providing aid to former enemies. What you see as irrational emotion, we see as practical wisdom. The aliens who rescued Dr. Chen proved they share our values. That makes them more valuable to us than any trade agreement or military alliance. Meanwhile, at the site of the human fleet, the situation was evolving in ways that neither the collective nor Earth's government had anticipated. The initial rescue mission had expanded into a massive joint research and development project. Human and alien teams were working together on problems that had stumped scientists for decades. Dr. Martinez transmitted her latest report to Earth, knowing it would eventually reach the collective through diplomatic channels. The medical breakthroughs alone justify our presence here. Kethvar harmonic therapy could revolutionize treatment for neural disorders. Alani precision instruments are advancing our diagnostic capabilities by orders of magnitude. We're not just making friends, we're making revolutionary scientific progress. Captain Morden was experiencing similar amazement. The humans had shared defensive technologies that could protect exploration vessels from the exotic matter dangers that had destroyed the Prometheus station. Their adaptive engineering techniques were solving problems the collective had considered unsolvable. The humans think differently than we do, he reported to the collective's Science Council. They approach problems with an assumption that solutions exist, even when logic suggests otherwise. This persistence has led to breakthroughs that our more cautious methods missed. But it was the smaller interactions that were having the most profound impact. Human children aboard the family vessels were learning alien languages and customs with remarkable speed. Alien crew members were adopting human expressions and humor. Cultural barriers that usually took decades to bridge were dissolving in weeks. Zexith had become particularly fascinated with human medical philosophy. Your species treats medicine as a battle against death and disease, he observed during one of his conversations with Dr. Martinez. We approach it as a restoration of natural balance. Combining these philosophies has created treatment options neither of us considered alone. Back in the collective council, the debate was intensifying. Intelligence reports from the human fleet were painting a picture that didn't match anyone's expectations. Instead of military preparations, the humans were conducting extensive cultural and scientific exchanges. Instead of territorial expansion, they were sharing their most advanced technologies freely. Perhaps, suggested Counselor Lindar of the peaceful gardener species, we are witnessing something new in galactic history, a species that responds to kindness with overwhelming generosity rather than calculated reciprocity. Zarthek's scales showed deep skepticism. No species acts without self-interest. The humans must have an agenda beyond simple gratitude. Ambassador Reston stood again. Counselor, you're right that we have an agenda. We want to build the kind of galaxy where species help each other, not because they have to, but because they choose to. We want to create alliances based on trust rather than fear. The crew of the Gentle Current showed us that's possible. Our response is an investment in that kind of future. The chamber fell silent as the assembled representatives considered this. Most galactic alliances were indeed based on mutual need or shared threats. The idea of alliances based on mutual respect and shared values was alien to most species. And if other species don't share these values? Asked Veltar. What happens when you encounter civilizations that see your compassion as weakness? Reston's expression hardened slightly. Then they'll discover that humans can be just as committed to protecting their friends as they are to making them. We've brought our entire fleet here to honor those who helped us. Do you think we'd bring any less to defend them? The implicit threat was clear, but it carried a different message than most military posturing. The humans weren't threatening expansion or conquest. They were promising protection for those who earned their loyalty. It was a kind of power projection the collective had never encountered before. As the session continued, it became clear that the galaxy was dealing with something unprecedented. A species that combined advanced military capabilities with genuine altruism. A civilization that could deploy overwhelming force in service of moral principles rather than territorial gain. The question facing the collective was whether this represented an opportunity or a threat. And the answer to that question might depend on how each species chose to treat humanity's friends. The attack came without warning on a routine morning that had started like any other. Aboard the joint human-alien research fleet, Dr. Sarah Chen was reviewing data from the latest exotic matter experiments when alarms began blaring throughout the gentle current. Emergency lights bathed the corridors in pulsing red as crew members rushed to battle stations they had never expected to use. Captain Morden's calm voice echoed through the ship's communication system. All crew to emergency stations. We have incoming vessels of unknown configuration. This is not a drill. Sarah felt her heart racing as she made her way to the bridge. Through the viewport, she could see sleek, predatory ships emerging from hyperspace. Their hulls were black as space itself, and they moved with the fluid grace of natural hunters. These weren't the geometric designs favored by most collective species. Who are they? Sarah asked as she reached the bridge. Tashka's pale Helani features were tense with worry. Karthul raiders. They are not part of the collective. They take what they want and destroy what they cannot use. The Karthul were one of the galaxy's most feared predator species. They had no permanent worlds, no diplomatic relations, no laws beyond the rule of strength. They traveled in fleets, taking resources and captives from weaker civilizations before disappearing back into the void. Admiral Kane's voice crackled over the communication channel from the Endeavor. Captain Morden, we're reading 12 Karthul vessels on approach. Are they responding to hails? Negative, Admiral. The Karthul do not negotiate. They take or they destroy. Kane's response was immediate. All human vessels assume defensive formation around the gentle current. Protect our allies at all costs. Within minutes, the human fleet had repositioned itself into a protective shell around the alien research vessel. The massive battle cruisers formed the outer perimeter while smaller. Faster ships took positions to intercept any raiders that broke through the line. The lead Karthul vessel, a twisted thing that looked more grown than built, opened communications with a harsh, grating voice that the translators struggled to render in comprehensible language. Weak prey ships, you carry valuable research and salvageable crew. Surrender your vessels and we will grant quick deaths to those we do not require. Admiral Kane's response came without hesitation. This is Admiral Marcus Kane of the United Earth Fleet. You are threatening Allied vessels under our protection. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences. The Karthul commander's laughter was like grinding metal. Humans, new prey species with shiny ships, your reputation for compassion precedes you. We know you will not risk your precious lives for mere aliens. Sarah watched from the bridge of the gentle current as the alien raiders began their approach. She had read about the Karthul in the collective databases. They were efficient killers who had learned to exploit the reluctance of civilized species to fight. Most collective members would abandon allies rather than face significant losses against such ruthless opponents. But the Karthul had made a fundamental miscalculation about human nature. Fire, Kane ordered calmly. The space around the fleet erupted in controlled violence. Human weapon systems, designed for efficiency rather than elegance, unleashed devastating barrages at the approaching raiders. Plasma cannons and railguns spoke with the voice of thunder, turning the void into a web of destructive energy. The Karthul had expected hesitation, negotiation, perhaps a token resistance followed by withdrawal. Instead, they found themselves facing the coordinated firepower of 300 disciplined warships operated by a species that viewed the attack on their allies as a personal affront. Impossible. the Carthul commander snarled, as his lead ships took heavy damage. No species fights so fiercely for others. What do these aliens offer you? Kane's voice carried across all frequencies. They offered kindness to one of ours when they could have done nothing. That makes them family, and nobody threatens our family. The battle was unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. Collective military doctrine emphasized minimal casualties and proportional response. Human military doctrine, shaped by thousands of years of warfare, emphasized overwhelming force applied with surgical precision to achieve decisive victory. The Carthul raiders found themselves outgunned, outmaneuvered, and completely unprepared for the intensity of human combat operations. Ships that had terrorized the outer systems for decades were being systematically destroyed by weapons that struck with impossible accuracy from impossible ranges. Aboard the Gentle Current, Captain Morden watched in amazement as human fighters weaved through the battle space like deadly dancers. Their pilots displayed a combination of skill and aggression that he had never witnessed before. How do they fly like that? Tashka asked in wonder as a human fighter squadron destroyed 2 Carthul corvettes in a perfectly coordinated attack. They train for war even in peacetime, Sarah explained, remembering her conversations with Admiral Kane. Every human pilot drills constantly for combat scenarios. They treat defensive allies as seriously as defense of Earth itself. Zexith, monitoring the battle from his medical station, was equally astounded. Their tactical coordination is extraordinary. They function as a single organism despite being separate ships with separate crews. That's how humans fight, Sarah said proudly. We don't just coordinate, we synchronize. Every ship knows what every other ship is going to do before they do it. The Carthul commander was learning this lesson firsthand as his carefully planned ambush disintegrated into a rout. Human battle groups moved with clockwork precision, cutting off escape routes and eliminating threats with methodical efficiency. This is impossible, he transmitted desperately. No species fights so intensely for non-relatives. Withdraw, all ships withdraw. But it was too late. The human fleet had positioned itself to prevent retreat, and Admiral Kane was clearly not interested in allowing the raiders to escape and threaten other innocent vessels. Surrender and you will be treated according to galactic law, Kane offered. Continue fighting and we will continue destroying your ships. The battle lasted less than 2 hours. When it was over, 8 Carthul vessels had been completely destroyed. 3 had been captured intact, and 1 heavily damaged ship had been allowed to escape to carry word of what had happened. The aftermath was revealing. Human medical ships immediately moved to assist damaged Carthul vessels, providing aid to the same beings who had come to kill them. Prisoners were treated with professional courtesy and given medical attention for their injuries. This behavior puzzled the surviving Carthul almost as much as the humans' ferocity in battle. Their species understood strength and weakness, predator and prey. They didn't understand a species that could switch from lethal force to mercy in the span of minutes. "Why do you heal us?" asked one captured Carthul warrior as Dr. Martinez treated his wounds. "We came to destroy you." "Because the fighting is over," she replied simply. "You're wounded. I'm a doctor. This is what doctors do." News of the battle spread through galactic communication networks within hours. The peaceful research mission had turned into a decisive military victory that sent shockwaves through both the collective and the galaxy's various outlaw factions. In the collective council chambers, the response was immediate and concerned. "High Counselor." Zarthek called for emergency sessions to discuss the implications of human military capability. "They destroyed an entire Carthul raiding fleet," he announced to the assembled representatives. "Not defeated. Tot drove off. Destroyed. This level of military effectiveness has not been seen since the ancient wars." But Ambassador Reston's report painted a different picture. The humans fought to defend their allies, not to conquer territory or gain resources. Once the threat was eliminated, they immediately provided humanitarian aid to the defeated enemy. This suggests a species with principles that govern their use of force. Counselor Zatha's crystalline form chimed with uncertainty. A species capable of such violence but controlled by moral constraints. This is unprecedented in galactic history. Meanwhile, aboard the human fleet, the aftermath of battle was being processed in a uniquely human way. Memorial services were held for the 3 human crew members who had died in the fighting. Their sacrifice was honored not just by their own ships, but by the grateful crew of the Gentle Current. Captain Morden spoke at the memorial ceremony, his words translated and broadcast throughout both fleets. These humans died protecting beings they barely knew, from a species they had never encountered. They gave their lives for the principle that kindness should be protected and evil should be opposed. We will remember their sacrifice for as long as our ships sail among the stars. The ceremony was attended by representatives of both species, with human and alien crew members standing together in solemn respect. The bonds forged in peaceful cooperation had been tested in combat and emerged stronger than before. Dr. Sarah Chen found herself thinking about the broader implications as she watched the ceremony. The galaxy had just witnessed something new, a species that would fight desperately to protect allies while showing mercy to defeated enemies. It was a combination of traits that challenged every assumption about how galactic politics worked. "What happens now?" she asked Admiral Kane as the ceremony concluded. Kane looked out at the mixed fleet of human and alien vessels. "Now the galaxy knows what humanity stands for. We protect our friends, we oppose those who prey on the innocent, and we show mercy to the defeated. That's going to change everything." He was right. Word of the battle was reaching every corner of known space, carried by traders, diplomats, and refugees. The message was clear. Humanity had announced itself as a new force in galactic affairs, one guided by principles rather than just interests. And in the depths of space, the alliance between humans and the crew of the Gentle Current had been forged in fire and proven unbreakable. 6 months after the battle with the Carthul Raiders, the galaxy had fundamentally changed. The human embassy on the collective capital world of Concordia bustled with activity as representatives from dozens of species sought audiences with Ambassador Reston. The modest building that had once housed humanity's tentative diplomatic mission had been expanded 3 times to accommodate the flood of visitors. Dr. Sarah Chen stood in the embassy's main conference room, addressing a gathering of representatives from 12 different species. As the survivor of the Prometheus incident, and the catalyst for humanity's dramatic entrance onto the galactic stage, she had become an unexpected spokesperson for human-alien cooperation. "The medical exchange program has exceeded all expectations," she reported to the assembled delegates. "Kethvar harmonic therapy is now being used in human hospitals across 3 star systems. Human surgical techniques have reduced mortality rates for complex alien procedures by 40%. This is what cooperation can achieve." The results spoke for themselves. The joint research stations established after the Carthul incident were producing breakthrough discoveries at an unprecedented rate. Human and alien scientists working together were solving problems that had puzzled individual species for centuries. But the changes went far beyond science and medicine. The galaxy's political landscape was shifting as smaller species began to seek human protection and partnership. The traditional power structures of the collective were being challenged by a new model, based on mutual respect rather than calculated advantage. Captain Morden, now serving as a special advisor to the Collective Science Council, had observed these changes firsthand. His ship, the Gentle Current, had become a symbol of the new cooperation. Extensively upgraded with human defensive systems and crewed by mixed human-alien teams, it represented what the galaxy could become. "The humans think in terms of permanent alliances," he explained to a gathering of collective leaders. "When they commit to friendship, they mean it to last for generations. This is revolutionary thinking in galactic politics. The revolution was already visible in the outer systems. Pirate raids had dropped to their lowest levels in recorded history, as word spread that attacking human allies would bring swift and overwhelming retaliation. 3 more Carthul fleets had been destroyed by human forces while attempting raids on protected worlds. But more importantly, the human model of alliance was being copied by other species. The collective had always been a loose association of convenience. Now, smaller groups within it were forming tighter bonds based on shared values and mutual support. Admiral Kane stood before the Collective Military Council, delivering a presentation that would have been unthinkable just months before. As a representative of the newest member species, he was explaining to civilizations thousands of years older how modern warfare should be conducted. "Defense is most effective when it's collective," he stated, gesturing to holographic displays showing fleet formations. "Individual species protecting only themselves create weak points that predators can exploit. Species protecting each other create a web of mutual defense that's nearly impenetrable. The military implications were staggering. Human tactical doctrine, based on coordinated fleet actions and overwhelming force projection, was being adopted by collective defense forces. The result was a military capability that dwarfed anything the galaxy had seen since the ancient wars between the first starfaring civilizations. High Counselor Zarthek, once humanity's most vocal critic, had become one of their strongest supporters after his own world was saved from a Carthul assault by a human battle group. The reptilian leader's scales now showed the warm colors of friendship when he spoke about Earth's contribution to galactic security. "I confess I was wrong about human motivations," he admitted, during a private meeting with Ambassador Reston. "I assumed your species acted from hidden self-interest because that is how most species operate. I did not understand that some species genuinely value the welfare of others." Reston smiled at the acknowledgement. "To be fair, Counselor, most of the galaxy operates on the principle of calculated cooperation. Humans are unusual in that we form emotional bonds that override pure logic. It makes us unpredictable, but it also makes us reliable, in ways that contracts and treaties never could." The reliability of human friendship was being tested constantly as more species sought formal alliances with Earth. The human government had established strict criteria for partnership. Potential allies had to demonstrate a commitment to peaceful cooperation and the protection of innocent life. Species that met these standards found themselves with the most powerful military protection in the galaxy. Dr. Martinez had returned to Earth to establish the new Xenobiology Institute, but she maintained close contact with her alien colleagues through quantum communication. The research breakthroughs continued at an accelerating pace as more species joined the collaborative networks. We're not just sharing knowledge anymore," she reported during a holoconference with researchers across 12 worlds. "We're developing entirely new fields of study: comparative consciousness research, multi-species sociology, xenocultural psychology. These didn't exist before humans and aliens started working closely together. The cultural exchanges were perhaps even more profound than the scientific ones. Human music was being performed on alien worlds, creating fusion genres that couldn't have existed before. Alien art forms were inspiring human creativity in ways that transcended mere imitation. Children aboard human family vessels were growing up bilingual in alien languages. Young aliens were learning human sports and games. A generation was emerging that saw cross-species friendship as normal rather than exceptional. Zexith had established a medical research station in Earth orbit, where he worked directly with human doctors to develop new treatments. His understanding of human psychology had evolved considerably since first meeting Sarah Chen. "Humans form what they call found families," he explained to a gathering of alien anthropologists. "They create kinship bonds with individuals who share their values regardless of species or biological relationship. This explains their willingness to fight for allies as if defending blood relatives." The concept of found family was spreading through alien cultures, particularly among species that had traditionally maintained strict social hierarchies. The idea that individuals could choose their primary loyalty group based on shared principles rather than accident of birth was revolutionary. But not everyone in the galaxy welcomed these changes. The hegemony of Krath, an empire built on conquest and subjugation, viewed human influence as a direct threat to their expansion plans. Their ambassador delivered a formal warning to the collective council. "The humans disrupt the natural order," Ambassador Vextar declared, his insectoid features twisted with contempt. "They protect the weak and encourage resistance to legitimate authority. This cannot be tolerated." The hegemony had good reason for concern. 3 worlds that had been targeted for Krath expansion had formally requested human protection, making military conquest impossible without triggering a war with Earth's allies. The traditional galactic balance of power was indeed being disrupted. Ambassador Reston's response was diplomatic but firm. "The collective has always been based on voluntary cooperation between sovereign species. We're simply extending that principle to include active mutual defense. Any species that sees this as threatening might want to examine their own intentions." The implicit challenge was clear. Species that operated through intimidation and exploitation would find their methods increasingly ineffective in a galaxy where victims could call on human protection. The age of predator empires preying on weaker civilizations was coming to an end. As the first anniversary of the Prometheus incident approached, Sarah Chen prepared for a ceremony that would formalize the new reality. The Treaty of Stellar Friendship, signed by representatives of 43 species, established the framework for the new alliance system. Unlike traditional treaties based on trade agreements and mutual non-aggression pacts, this document enshrined principles that had previously existed only in human philosophy. The signatories committed to protecting each other's civilians, sharing scientific knowledge freely, and providing aid to any member species facing natural or artificial disasters. This treaty represents more than just an alliance, Sarah addressed the assembly of delegates. It represents a new way of thinking about our place in the galaxy. We're not just individual species competing for resources. We're members of a galactic community with shared responsibilities to each other. The ceremony was broadcast live across human space and to every allied world. Children who had grown up during the age of cooperation watched as their leaders formalized what they already considered natural: the idea that different species could be friends, allies, and family. Admiral Kane, now serving as Earth's military liaison to the new alliance, reflected on how much had changed since that day when the gentle current had rescued a single human from the wreckage of a research station. "We came here to say thank you," he said during his speech at the ceremony. "But what we found was something much more valuable than gratitude. We found proof that compassion isn't limited to any single species, and that civilizations built on kindness are stronger than those built on fear." The galaxy was indeed different now. Trade routes were safer. Scientific knowledge was advancing at unprecedented rates. Cultural exchange was creating new forms of art and music and literature that enriched every participating civilization. But perhaps most importantly, a new generation was growing up with the assumption that the galaxy was fundamentally safe, that help would come when needed, and that different species could work together toward common goals. Captain Morden, now commanding a mixed-species exploration vessel, summed up the transformation during his final log entry before departing on a mission to survey potentially habitable worlds in the galactic rim. "When we rescued Dr. Chen, we thought we were performing a simple act of compassion. We could not have imagined that this single decision would reshape galactic civilization. Perhaps this teaches us that the smallest acts of kindness can have the largest consequences. If so, then the galaxy is a place of infinite possibility, limited only by our willingness to help each other. And in the depths of space, new ships bearing the mixed crews of a dozen species set out to explore the unknown, carrying with them the revolutionary idea that the galaxy belonged to all its children equally.